Beyond the buzzer, inside the game, this is Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Once again, another fantastic show here, the Sports IQ. Glad you're with us here. Larry Smith, producer, Tony Cordaro, our editor, Josh Ewing. By the way, in case you haven't figured this out, it is a pure joy to come on here every day and bring this to you, and we appreciate some of the comments. Got a comment yesterday about the alleged drunk sheriff in the squad car. Turns out going 110 miles per hour. A little follow-up on that. He's in jail. The governor has asked him to resign, so maybe he won't be the sheriff much longer. But clearly, 3 DUIs in 2 years, it's an issue there. Anyway, but we're here to talk a little sports, and we've got lots on the way. Andrew Monaco, our friend who's the Texas A&M voice of the Aggies, talking A&M football as the Aggies take on Florida this week. We've got Zach Neel talking Oregon. Huge matchup Saturday afternoon. The Ducks welcoming in Indiana. The two teams right now sitting at the top of the Big Ten, both undefeated, so something's going to give here. Hoosiers, again, boy, what they have done here and they're under second-year coach Curt Cignetti is just stuff of legend. And then a bit later, the other side of that coin, Shannon Griffith, the coach, joining us talking about the Hoosiers. The other side of that coin, we'll talk college football as well. Tomorrow we've got a busy show. We'll talk Alabama. We'll talk Missouri. We'll talk Notre Dame with our friend Eric Hansen. Also, we'll talk a little Tigers-Mariners Game 5 as well. Sean Windsor joining us to talk about that, the longtime Tigers beat writer. What a game last night, and we'll get to all that here in just a moment. Let's get to some headlines for you before we bring in Andrew to talk a little Aggies-Gators. WNBA Finals resuming last night, and what a game in Phoenix. Through 3 quarters, it looked like the Aces were going to just cruise to a 3-0 lead in this best-of-7 series. 17-point lead for Las Vegas. They've got the league MVP, A'ja Wilson, the fourth quarter coming. All over but the shouting, right? Wrong. The Mercury put on a furious rally led by Ka Copper. She had 11 of her 17 points in the fourth. Dewana Bonner, 25 points in the night. Satu Sabali at 24 for the Mercury. In fact, Bonner, one of the league's all-time leading scorers, and the midseason acquisition from the Fever, returning to the Mercury, where she had so many great years earlier in her career, hit those 2 free throws with just over a minute left to tie the game at 88. 1 possession left in the game. The Aces turned to who else? Wilson, the league's only 4-time MVP. And according to Coach Becky Hammond, there was no discussing anyone else getting that final shot. She said, quote, "You give the ball to A'ja and get out of the way." And they did that. Wilson did the rest. Turnaround jumper over Alyssa Thomas and Dewana Bonner with 0.3 seconds on the clock. It was epic. 90-88, the Aces get the win. They're now up 3-0 in the series. Wilson, 34 points, 14 boards. Her 291 points now in this postseason is a new WNBA record for the most points in a single playoffs. Game 4, back in Phoenix tomorrow night. The Aces will try to close it out and win their 3rd title in 4 years. Epic drama. Okay, on to the diamond. 4 teams began the day fighting for their playoff lives. 3 of them still alive. Like they used to sing on Sesame Street, one of those things just doesn't belong here. One just isn't the same. And that team is the New York Yankees. Toronto closing out the Yanks' postseason dreams with a 5-2 win in the Bronx. The Jays using 8 pitchers. What we talked yesterday about, what are you doing? Why not throw a starter out there? Well, you know what? They're not asking us to manage the team, right? There's a reason why those guys are getting paid millions, and they're now in the ALCS. 8 relievers, 8 to end New York's season as they advance to the ALCS for the first time since 2016. And now Toronto gets to wait and see what happens between the Tigers and Mariners. Detroit forcing a deciding Game 5 with a convincing 9-3 win over Seattle. And again, that was in Detroit, of the Tigers' first home playoff win this season. And get this, their first home win since they beat the White Sox 6-0 back on September 6th, an entire month since they won there in Detroit. So Friday's matchup, this is a good one. Game 5 in Seattle, 2024 Cy Young Award winner Tariq Skubal going up against George Kirby of the Mariners. Over in the National League, Kyle Schwarber homered twice, his first towering shot clearing the right field pavilion in a 3-run 4th inning. Phillies avoiding a sweep with an 8-2 win over the Dodgers. Those 2 long balls, the first of the postseason for Schwarber, who led the National League in big flies this year, also snapped an 0-for-8 streak in this series. In the other series at Wrigley, the Cubs stayed alive thanks to a 4-run first inning led by Michael Bush, who homered to lead things off. He becomes the first player in Major League history with multiple leadoff homers in a single postseason series. Milwaukee loaded the bases in the eighth, but Brad Keller escaped the jam when he struck out Jake Bauers on a foul-tipped 97-mile-per-hour fastball. Keller then retired the side in order in the ninth to get the save. Game 4 of this series tonight comes down to 1 to 9 o'clock Eastern start on TBS. Let's get back, though, to college football. And we've said again, look, every weekend with this new world of the college football expansion and the Pac-12 basically going away in terms of the power conferences, every single weekend there are some fantastic games. And this weekend, again, great games. We've got Texas A&M now sitting there atop the SEC, maybe the team to beat right now in the SEC, them and Ole Miss, taking on a Florida team that many thought was left for dead after their September, but what a big win last week. Joining us once again on the show is our friend Andrew Monaco, voice of the Texas A&M Aggies. Andrew, always good to see you. First, let's pick up where we left off our conversation a few weeks ago. What a start to the season here by the Aggies, and what a job, as we were saying in the break before we came on, that Mike Elko has done with this program.
Yeah, the Notre Dame win was illuminating. Let's put it that way. And the way they won on the road at Notre Dame with the game-winning drive at the end answered some questions about this team being able, they had done that, but came up short in the past. And the reason why they had come up short in the past is because then the defense would not secure that game. 2 weeks later, it's exactly what happens against Auburn. They stop Auburn twice in a little over the last 2 minutes. So some of the answers we're getting for this team, and they've continued it into SEC play and they've been home, and that's where there's still more questions about this team. But the defense was dominant against Auburn and against Mississippi State, and I think the offense is still very good. And we're seeing that Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver are not flukes; that they are all SEC talent, making Marcel Reed better. But they've added the run game in the last couple of weeks, and it's not easy to run the ball in the SEC. So this is a team I thought was very key after Notre Dame. How do you handle success? It's one thing about, we always look about, how do you handle failure? How do you handle success? How do you handle the 2 weeks when everybody's saying how great you are? I mean, you're only 3-0 after beating Notre Dame. I shouldn't say only. And you're rising in the polls. Well, as that number gets smaller next to your school's name, your target gets larger on their back. And so far, they have navigated it, I think, beautifully against Auburn and Mississippi State.
And now I think you've got the one thing that we talk about schedules, and every SEC schedule is a gauntlet. And listen, I'm not going to take anything away from A&M schedule either, but compared to some other teams, it is an easier schedule in terms of, you do have a Florida team coming up here this weekend. Look, we just saw what Florida can do. They've lost to some of the best teams in the country. So those 3 losses, I mean, all those teams have been ranked, et cetera. An Arkansas team has already gone through a coaching change. You do have LSU and Missouri coming up. South Carolina's had some issues. And then, of course, you get the rivalry game against Texas. So it's not that I'm not trying to say that's not a tough schedule. It is. But we have some SEC teams that are, that every single game the rest of the way is against a team that either is or has been ranked.
Yeah, and to be flat out honest, the Aggies haven't played an SEC game on the road this year. Now that's coming. They're going to be away for over a month, but that's coming. And that's why I say some of the questions have been answered. But I think I like the confidence of this team. And I was saying that last week against Mississippi State, to see the Bulldogs come in and their confidence under Jeff Lebby, that's exciting to me to see programs. And you could see that they had how they felt about their offense, how they felt about their defense. Look, ultimately Texas A&M wore that team down. And that was, I thought, the lesson that the Aggies learned last week. And Mike Elko said this on Monday, that SEC games are 60 minutes. They're not going to be decided at halftime. So you look at that first half for the Aggies. Again, the penalties have got to stop. They can't keep shooting themselves in the foot that way. But he said overall of the drives, they came away with no points. But Mike said, we want to look a little bit deeper. They get stopped on a 4th and 1. That's the problem. That's got to change but he really liked the efficiency of that drive, but it comes away with no points. Another drive ends with an interception. So again, what's good about the drive, and then how can we correct what happens? Well, then in the second half, as he tells that offensive line, challenge accepted. and then they just flat out win the line of scrimmage. Both lines of scrimmage dominated by Texas A&M. That's a good lesson because, to your point, Larry, in this schedule, you're going to need that for every game that you play, whoever it is. And it's going to be needed against Florida. And I think Florida's defense, of the teams that we've played, similar to Auburn. And I like Auburn's defense. I do not like the offense, but I like the defense. And I think Florida has more weapons on offense, to tell you the truth. So what have you learned? What can you keep doing? If I talked about Mississippi State with the confidence, I think Texas A&M under Mike Elko in his second year with these players also gaining confidence week to week.
Yeah. We talked last week with Kevin Brockway, who's a Florida Gators beat writer, and he said the same thing. We talked about how this Florida defense had the pieces to stop Texas. I mean, we discussed that a week ago on the show, and we saw it come through on Saturday. We talked about Mike Elko and what he's done replacing Jimbo Fisher. You've been there in the booth for a long time there in College Station. What's different about, and we've discussed too, that Texas A&M has had hot starts and then not finished in late October, November. What is different about this team, this Texas A&M team, that gives you some optimism about them taking this good start, this 5-0 start, and building on it and finishing up strong where maybe they didn't in the past?
I think you have the guys who came back. It's one thing to just come back, but are you a better player? And they are a better player. I think everything has been, I think each position has been elevated either by a returner or it's been addressed in the portal or through recruiting. Wide receiver play better. Marcel Reed is a better quarterback. Le'Veon Moss is healthy. Reuben Owens, who we missed all of last year, there's your 1-2 punch. Like we talked about Notre Dame's 1-2 punch at running back. And you talk about Mississippi State. Oh man, they've got two backs. Sometimes we forget because we're too close to it. So does Texas A&M. And it's nice to be able to see that, where Reuben took up the mantle last week after Le'Veon was a little bit sick in that game. You see why Cassius Howell has all the notoriety around him. He is a game changer there at defensive end. Linebacking play has never been better, and the secondary's back and playing well. And it's all in concert. It all plays together. That's what gives you the confidence, is you're seeing players not just returning because, you know what, I like school. I like the NIL money. I like these guys. Nah, they're putting in the work. And again, I think there's a little chip on the shoulder because last year was so disappointing, but we're not going to find out until November if they put themselves in that same position. But they get the taste because this team that started number 19 is now 5. Florida's coming off a huge win over Texas. Everybody buried them, but they know how to play a top 5 team already. It's going to be their third one. That's why I think everything is so intriguing. But I think that's why this confidence is being instilled in this Aggie team, because they're starting to see themselves get better. And week by week, you're seeing that complementary football. And I think they like and more efficient on drives. And I think they like the results that they're seeing because of the work that they're putting in, not just because, we wore black uniforms, we're going to win at Kyle Field. No, it was the effort that they put in for those 60 minutes.
Yeah, that's fair. Talking with Andrew Monaco, voice of the Texas A&M Aggies, as again, he mentioned, number 5 team in the country. They're taking on Florida this weekend. No surprise with any time you have the college rankings that, you've got a ton of SEC teams there. Ole Miss at 4, A&M is at 5, Oklahoma 6, Alabama 8, Georgia 10, LSU 11, Tennessee 12, Missouri 14. Well, we'll see if they get the tough matchup against Alabama this weekend. What team there in the SEC scares you the most right now as you watch this conference and this season develop?
Would it be the teams that we're going to play, or just a team that, because it's hard to project to Atlanta? See, and this is how I think. Okay. So obviously I'm so conditioned being around teams. Okay. Who you playing on Saturday? Right.
Yeah.
DJ Lagway scares me. Jaden Ball scares me. Right. It's a defense that thumps. But your test becomes, look, we haven't been to Arkansas because we played in Arlington so long. We haven't been to Arkansas in a long time. And I think that's one that they are just waiting for Texas A&M to go into Razorback Stadium. Have not been able, since I've been here, have not been able to win in Baton Rouge. Had really close games and had chances, but didn't do enough with some good teams. Look, that 2019 blew the doors off Texas A&M, but they blew the doors off everybody that year. Those are the types of games that get me, that those are the tests. And But of all those teams that you mentioned, Larry, all have an identity. Mm-hmm. And that, like Lane Kiffin he's got that Ole Miss team has an identity, and he's changed it a little bit. It used to be blitzkrieg on offense. Now they've got a little more of a running game. They've always had a running game, don't get me wrong, but it's a little more ball control, a little more time of possession, understanding you can't keep throwing your defense out there for over 30 minutes. If you can play the little bit of that time of possession game. Georgia, identity. Georgia, bouncing back from a loss. And Kirby has that. Alabama, even under Kalen DeBoer, understands, okay, that's an early loss against Florida State. And now coming back, test after test. And to your point, there's Missouri. LSU, Brian Kelly, another good defense. The offense, that's always been the surprise to me. But the defense is better than last year, and I like that one last year. So that's what gets me. Like DJ Lagway, this isn't the rookie that we saw last year splitting time with Graham Mertz. He's now in his second season. If we like Marcel Reed, imagine the progression Marcel's made. That's what DJ Lagway is doing for Florida. Lenora Sellers, how do you handle being a Heisman hopeful at South Carolina? And he battled through injury. And then, that's just a big, strong quarterback who's almost impossible to bring down. He just extends plays. Those are the types of things that get me, Larry, about this SEC that, and no disrespect to Missouri, but Eli Drinkwitz is doing this year after year after year. Clark Lee is doing it now for a second season. When you upgrade talent, and you have to in the SEC, it's an arms race, to use that analogy. If you stand still, you're falling behind. And all these teams, I think, have gotten the right coaches and getting the right players. And players want to look. If I can play in the SEC, I can go play in the league. No one's ever hidden from that or run away from that. That's part of it. And you're seeing that talent, but you have to match other teams' talent and their physicality and that speed. And for me, Texas A&M is able to do that in positions where they weren't in the past, or they've had highly touted players who didn't understand what it takes. It's great to put on that hat on signing day, but that's the last moment that it's about you. Now it's about your team. You still have to win your battle. And after that, and I think they kind of missed on that. And I think the types of players that Mike Elko is bringing in understands, okay, what's the role coming in? And maybe that role will change. And maybe I have to be a special teamer, but I'm going to be the best special teamer here. I want to be the starting safety. But are you better than right now Dalton Brooks or Marcus Ratcliffe? No, but your time may come. Damian Sanford at linebacker. Loved having Scooby Williams come back, but he gets injured after the interception at Notre Dame. Okay, cliche, next man up. Right. But you have guys who I think are willing and accept that time. And you can't wait for your time to play. They are prepared to play. And that's been noticeable by this team this season.
Yeah, it's exciting to watch them and these other teams again step up. We mentioned Texas A&M, Ole Miss getting a chance to flex their muscles a bit, and we'll see where the season goes. Andrew, good to talk with you. Good luck as Texas A&M host Florida this weekend, and we'll talk with you soon.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
All right, buddy. Appreciate you. It is Andrew Monaco, once again, voice of the Texas A&M Aggies. And again, the big game this weekend, A&M hosting Florida. And again, like you said, some tough contests coming up, some tough road games coming up in the SEC. We'll see how Coach Elko and his staff and his team handle those challenges. It's a Sports IQ. This is Larry Smith. We've got much more to come. Keep it here.
Are you tired of your website making your business look bad? Is your current web developer dropping the ball? Let's face it, if your website isn't making you money, it's broken. Let Neon Rain create a website that turns your visitors into customers. Neon Rain has worked with hundreds of businesses across North America, building custom websites and applications with modern designs that are easy to update and work well on mobile devices. They can do it for you too. What sets Neon Rain apart? They actually deliver on their promises. Call today for a free consultation. 303-957-3092. That's Neon Rain at 303-957-3092. Or visit them at neonrain.com.
You're listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Welcome back to the Sports IQ. Let's go now to the Big Ten, and producer Tony has our next guest.
Well, thanks, Larry. Appreciate it. And all Big Ten eyes are going to be one of two places, either that Illinois-Ohio State game or the other huge game this weekend, which pits Indiana traveling out to take on Oregon, and we're lucky enough to have Zach Neel. He is the USA Today, Oregon's football beat writer, joining us. And Zach, it is going to be a fun Saturday, is it not?
Yeah, we're looking forward to this one. It feels like a nice little combination for Oregon. You had the Penn State game a couple weeks ago, a nice bye week to, rest and recover after that trip and that, that insane game. And now you get another top 10 matchup, this time inside Austin Stadium. You got College game day coming to town. Fans are geared up for this. Students are finally back in school now too. So it's going to be a very interesting scene on Saturday. It should be a really fun one.
You've been covering Oregon for a while now. When that crowd gets going at Outson, what does that mean to an Oregon football team? Can you put a point number on that value?
I don't know about a point number. It's a great home field advantage. I think one of the best in the nation. It's a small stadium. I mean, it holds 59,000 when it's fully packed. I think they've sometimes gotten up to 60,000 or close, but it's half the size of a Penn State or the shoe with Ohio State, some of these big stadiums, but it gets as loud, if not louder than any of them. I was at that Penn State game. I heard the noise. It was very loud. I can honestly say I think that Austin I have heard louder, like last year against Ohio State, I think was the loudest I've ever heard it. So that's not just the homer and me speaking. I really do believe that. But yeah, it's a great home field advantage. I think it's something that Dan Lanning said earlier in the week. He said, we went and saw Happy Valley 2 weeks ago. We saw what that was like. I can't wait to be back home in Austin and show what we could do again. So I know that we're looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to seeing the matchup of these two quarterbacks. Dante Moore and Mendoza have put up incredible numbers, something like 30 touchdowns and 2 interceptions combined between the two of them. Both teams 5-0. What intrigues you most about this quarterback matchup?
Yeah, I think it's, like you said, two really, really good passers that not a lot of people expected to be at the top of that quarterback list coming into this year. I mean, we were all talking about the Arch Mannings and the Cade Klubniks, Garrett Nussmeier. Those guys have kind of, have not impressed so far this year, but guys like Dante Moore and Fernando Mendoza have looked really, really good. So I know that there are a lot of NFL scouts kind of looking at this game to see what these guys look like. I don't know whether or not Dante Moore is going to go to the draft next year or return for another season, but that's something that Oregon fans are watching very closely because they obviously want him back for another year with as well as he's played. But yeah, these two quarterbacks, they don't make mistakes. They're really good game. I wouldn't call them game managers. That's kind of thrown around sometimes as a quarterback who doesn't do much. They can control the game, though, and they don't put the ball in harm's way. They do everything that the offense asks them to do, and they make plays. So, I think two of the best quarterbacks in the nation, two really good defenses they're going up against, too. So it's not going to be easy for them. I don't know that this is going to be a high-scoring shootout just because of the quarterbacks, but going to be some high-level football played on Saturday.
Pro Football Focus has a number in all of their metrics, and one of it is explosive plays on defense. And right now, in their metrics, Oregon ranks number 1. What makes that defense so special? How can they change the tide of a game quickly for the Ducks' favor?
I think they're really good at matching up at different levels of play. This we saw last game. I keep saying last week. Last game against Penn State, we knew that the rushing attack for Penn State was going to be a huge deal, and whether or not Oregon could stop that would likely decide the game. They did a great job. I think in the entire game, they held them to 4 yards per carry. Going into the fourth quarter, I believe it was 2.2 yards per carry. So that defensive line did a really good job of containing the duo of Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. So I think Oregon feels good stopping the run if they need to. But they've also got a really good secondary with 2 young corners who are very, very good. They haven't been tested a ton yet. We'll see what they look like this weekend against Mendoza and those receivers. But I just think they feel really good about how much talent they have at every level of this defense. And if someone happens to get past the front line, they've got a really good set of safeties, good set of corners to kind of clean up after them.
Now, Mendoza presents a little different problem than Drew Aller. Aller doesn't really like getting outside the pocket. Mendoza will pull it down and will run it and is a threat to run. Does that pose any different dilemma for the Oregon defense coming in?
It's something to be aware of for sure. I don't know if they're going to run a spy out there, kind of just keep him in there. Oregon has done a really good job of running this. It's like a 3 safety look. It's kind of a Tampa 2 coverage. They've got 2 high safeties, but then they have a third safety kind of playing a really deep linebacker role. He's got an opportunity to play whatever run he wants to, come down, crash down hard, or go on the box or out of the box and play coverage. So that's been Dylan Thienemann's job mostly this year, and he's done a really good job of that, the Purdue transfer. I could kind of see them doing that a lot more this week as well, and kind of having him as a spy a little bit and make sure that Mendoza is covered, and then also get back into pass coverage as well. So I trust this coaching staff a lot. I think Dan Lanning, Tosh Laploy, two of the best defensive minds in the nation. So I think they'll have the right plan and scheme for Mendoza.
And that's the other interesting part about this. You know, we talk about Mendoza, we talk about Moore, all the skill players, the running backs, wide receivers. But this game, the interesting stars of this game could be a pair of offensive lines and a pair of defensive lines that are both really, really playing at a high level right now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's the one thing that you're able to talk about the quarterbacks and how much success they've had, largely because the offensive lines have done a really good job of keeping them clean, keeping the running lanes open, and allowing this offense to flow. We know it all starts up front, both on offense and defense. So I think that both teams feel really good about where they are in the trenches. I'm excited to see that matchup. I think Oregon has a little bit more size on both sides of the ball than Indiana does. But they're talented, man. They've got a lot of really good players, a couple of good edge rushers, and I think they can move the ball around on offense, rushing the ball as well. I think they average 260 yards per game on the ground. So, they're not going to shy away from that. It'll be on Oregon to try and stop that.
If the game comes down to a chess match between Coach Lanning and Coach Cignetti, who do you think has an advantage? That they're both a little bit gambler, right? They both have a little bit of that gambler mentality. They might take a chance on fourth down here or there. Does one of them, you think, have a little bit of an edge here?
I don't know. That's one of the matchups that I'm most excited to see because, I really like Cignetti. I think that he's a fantastic coach. I think he's entertaining. I think he's really good at his job too. Obviously, I really like Dan Lanning too. I think that he's, his track record speaks for itself. That's an interesting thing to watch because if this game gets tight in the fourth quarter, it could come down to who is willing to, kind of stick their neck out and go for it in an inopportune time and risk it. So we've seen both coaches do that in the past. We know that they're both aggressive. They're both willing to do and say a lot in the media. So I'm curious to see what happens on the field and then what is said after the game.
Oregon in the preseason poll was not as high as some people thought they should have been. Has that provided them with a little bit of chip on their shoulder after the way last season ended? Has it kind of helped motivate them any to prove everybody we really are one of the best teams in the country and we're going to show everybody?
I think maybe a little bit. They felt really good last year, obviously, and then it ended the way it did against Ohio State, which was tough. But Dan Lanning's message to the team going into this year was double down. They proved themselves last year that they could compete in the Big Ten, obviously won the Big Ten. They have yet to lose a Big Ten game. But they wanted to prove that again. Say, all right, we did it again. We did it last time. Let's do it again. I kind of feel like that's their message going into this week specifically because after going on the road and beating Penn State, you proved that you were a really good team. Now everyone nationally is kind of discounting that Penn State win a little bit because of what happened against UCLA. Which is understandable. I mean, that's how people work. That's how national media works. They don't think that's as impressive now that they're out of the top 25. But okay, double down. Go prove it again. Go play a really good Indiana team at home. Show that you are one of these top teams in the nation. So I think maybe I don't know if you want to call it a chip on the shoulder, but they're definitely motivated for sure.
A lot of times, Zach, one of these games, these big, huge games, comes down to somebody who really is an unsung hero, somebody who doesn't get a lot of press, somebody who's, not the poster boy of the team. Is there somebody on Oregon you're looking for to maybe make that play or two that might be able to swing the tide of this game one way or the other?
I'm really looking at Oregon's linebacking core. Indiana's offense, they run an RPO heavy style offense where they're trying to put your linebackers in space and make them make a decision. I think that Oregon's defensive line is going to do a good job of muddying up rushing lanes, but you're still going to have the linebackers clean up. So, I mean, Bryce Betcher obviously gets a lot of attention. He's one of the poster boys of the team, but alongside him, Jerry Mixon, I believe he's a redshirt sophomore, a true sophomore. He's someone who I think will really step up. He's a great player, grades really well on Pro Football Focus, one of the best linebackers in the nation per them. I think he's someone who could have a big day on Saturday. He's someone that I'm looking for.
Now, if I'm sitting on my couch and I'm getting ready to watch this game, I'm thinking, okay, what does Oregon really need to do here to get this done? If I'm looking for three keys as I'm watching, what should I watch for to know it's going to be a good day for the Oregon Ducks?
Offensively, I think they need to run the ball really well. I mean, it all starts with the ground game, just controlling the game and being physical. They did a really good job against Penn State in getting into, 2nd and 4, 3rd and 2 situations where they could, comfortably go forward on 4th and 1. We saw them go for it 7 times in that game. So they stayed ahead of the chains really well. I think they need to do that again just to kind of keep control on the offensive side of the ball. And then defensively, it's the exact opposite. I mean, they need to try and force Indiana to be one-dimensional, and Indiana loves to get in those 2nd and 4 positions where they can run an RPO and pass if they need to, run if they need to. If you can keep them in, 3rd and long, 2nd and long situations and kind of shrink that playbook, I think that's the biggest key to this game. Make them one-dimensional, make them try and beat you with their arm, and then go from there.
All right, Zach Neel, he is the USA Today beat writer for the Oregon Ducks. Zach, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate the insight. Man, enjoy that game Saturday. You are going to have a prime seat. The rest of us will be on our couch. We're watching TV. You'll be right there in the middle of the action. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can't wait. Thanks again.
Appreciate it, Zach. We will take a quick timeout, and then Sports IQ will be right back with more.
Paramedic, firefighter, police officer. Different job titles, one common goal: to keep communities safe. They all risk their lives every day responding to emergencies. Just because they accept their jobs can be hazardous doesn't mean they have to be. Is your workplace safe for everyone? Learn more about the Put Yourself in Our Boots campaign at ourboots.ca. This message brought to you by the John Petropoulos Memorial Fund.
You're locked in to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Sports IQ continues. Producer Tony is with our next guest.
Well, Larry, thanks so much. And, one of the big games this weekend, it's just huge in the Big Ten, is Indiana traveling out west to take on Oregon, what should be a classic game. We are lucky enough to be joined by Shannon Griffith. He is Hoosier.com's lead football analyst. Shannon, thanks so much for joining us again. We've had you on before. Great stuff as always from you. We want to get your inside knowledge of what's going to happen here in this ball game. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Anytime.
So let's talk about first that Indiana offense. We had you on right before they played Illinois, and man, did they take care of business. I don't think anybody saw a 63-point outing coming from the Hoosiers, but that offense is clicking and firing on every cylinder.
Yeah, I don't think anybody, whether you're an Illinois fan or an Indiana fan, saw that type of ball game evolving as what it did on that Saturday. But you're correct. Indiana was able to, get momentum. Of course, the crowd there was phenomenal. It was a sellout crowd that was rocking there in Memorial Stadium on the campus of Bloomington. And it was just one of those games where bad things happened to Illinois that Indiana was just able to continue to keep on capitalizing on. And I think Illinois was in shell shock about midway through the second quarter.
Keeping Mendoza upright was key against Illinois. It'll be key again against this Oregon front. How has that offensive line come together to make sure, and given him, he's had some pretty clean pockets to throw from so far this season, which is nice to have, and obviously makes it easier to find those quality receivers and everything that Indiana has. Is there something about that Oregon defense and that Indiana front we should be looking for?
Well, this Oregon defense and their front seven are pretty strong and stout, but at the same time, they're very quick and speedy. So they've got a triple threat when it comes to being able to rush for and get pressure. Oregon has not, done a ton of blitzing this year. I mean, they do bring pressure, but I've never seen them just sell out and bring the house at somebody's, because they're able to play their coverages and get that pressure with 4-man. So Indiana will have their work cut out for them, especially with this defense and them wanting to get in the one-on-one matchups is what they try to do up front in their defensive line, and they do it quite well. And it will be a very big challenge for Indiana. Now, Indiana having playing Iowa prior to going on the bye week, I thought, Iowa's defensive line is a very stout and tough defensive line, and Indiana battled through that for the better part of the day. But this will be a step above of what Indiana's faced to date.
So what will Mendoza have to do as the quarterback, to keep that Indiana offense moving? Is he going to have to roll out a little more? Is there going to have to be a little more movement in that pocket to try to slow down their runs? How do you see the Indiana quarterback handling that?
Well, I would have thought prior to the season, they may have done more of changing the launch point for him for just because of his mobility, but they really haven't. They've stuck to what they've done, which is primarily a three-step process passing game. And what Mendoza does is he gets the ball in and out of his hands quickly. So he's one of those guys that they probably feel is just as comfortable just leaving him in the pocket more so than anything. Now, that's not to say they will not try some of that, but I don't know necessarily if they'll wholesale change that mentality of their drop back game just because of his quick delivery, which he does pretty well. Iowa could not get home for most part of their game. Now, he took some shots, but the ball was in and out of his hands pretty quick.
On the other side, the quarterback for Oregon, Dante Moore, first year's, running that program. He's looked really good, strong so far. What about his game do you think presents a problem for Indiana?
His mobility, because if you let him, if he gets outside of containment, he has the threat to run it. Now, he's not a guy that's going to be a quarterback run guy where they're going to mix these type of different plays that are quarterback specific run plays, but his ability as well to get the ball in and out of his hands. And if you do lose contain on him, he can take off and run. And he did that against Penn State, and in some respects hurt them in that regard because they would have him and he got out of it. And so he's a big, strong kid. He's like 6'3", 220 pounds of muscle. But, what I've been impressed with about him thus far is his ability as well to get the ball in and out of his hand. And he does not hold on to it too much. And he's got a pretty good group of wide receivers to throw it around to. So Indiana's going to have to do a great job of, one, maintaining an edge that doesn't let him get out of it, but also at the same time find ways to pressure him and pick your spots when they want to go after him, because I do think they're going to have to try to go after him some on Saturday, because if you just let him sit back there and not have any pressure, it's 7-on-7 for him. He'll pick you apart.
Is there any worry about going out west? This is the new era for the Big Ten. You're going coast to coast, doing a lot more traveling. This is Indiana's farthest game so far this season. Any worries about dealing with that time change and playing a game on the West Coast this way?
That's been a big topic of discussion here in the Big Ten over the last few weeks. I know some of the teams like Michigan that plays USC on Saturday as well out there in California, they're actually leaving Thursday after their practice to get out there a full day ahead of their game against USC. For Coach Cignetti, he's so much a down-to-earth individual that he doesn't like to be anywhere too long. So he'll go out at the last possible second like they did at UCLA. In his mind, you just wake up and play the game, and so they're not going to alter their travel plans. I think he said on his Monday presser that they're going to go out maybe a little bit earlier than they would. But as far as making a wholesale change to their travel, he's just not, he doesn't buy that hype that you see that some other teams have done thus far. So we'll find out. He's not going to make an excuse irregardless of what happens on Saturday because of what they traveled and how they traveled and when they traveled. He's just not that type of coach. He does not put a lot of stock into that aspect of things. It's
an interesting coaching matchup as well. Dan Lanning against Curt Cignetti. both guys, came into new programs, different situations. Oregon had been on the rise for quite a while. Kurt is really raising the Indiana program leaps and bounds from where it's been lately. How does that coaching matchup going to work? How is that chess game going to play out between those two on Saturday?
Well, I think even Coach Cignetti has acknowledged the job that Dan Lanning has done ever since he's taken over at Oregon, and recognized that, he's kind of one of the young phenoms that has stepped into the limelight there and has done a great job on many fronts leading that program. And it's interesting to see that you got the wily veteran heading up against the young whippersnapper, so to speak. But again, when these two match up and things of that nature, I think more importantly, it's turning it loose to the coordinators and the trust that they have, that Dan Lanning has in his two coordinators, Will Stein and what he has done offensively there, and letting, the Bryant Hayneses of Indiana staff go coach a game and put their players in the best possible position. And they're going to manage the game like they always do. So I don't think there's going to be any chess match headed into this game on Saturday, other than the fact that I do think Indiana may have to take some chances on fourth down at the right times to go for it, as opposed to maybe punting in certain situations, or getting points when they can get points. And if that means after a long drive, taking the field goal as opposed to trying to go for it.
Indiana, the non-conference schedule wasn't the strongest that a lot of teams face. Is this their chance really now to impress the national media? Do you think the win over Illinois was extremely impressive, just the way that they did it? But this is now a bona fide top 10. We figure this team is going to be in the college football playoff. I don't think there's any question about that after watching Penn State flame out the last 2 weeks. The top three teams in the Big Ten playoff-wise now have got to be Oregon, Ohio State, and Indiana, 1, 2, 3, right? That's the way the horses are running at this point. Is this their chance to stamp Indiana as a player on the national scene?
Yeah, at some point, Indiana is going to have to beat a team that is perceived to be in the upper echelon of the Big Ten. And I mean the Oregons, the Ohio States, in some years, the Michigans, and that matter, because of the brand name is what drives that perception on a national basis. So, yeah, they've got to find ways to find that opportunity to crack that ceiling to solidify their national uprising, as so to speak, with the national media to beat a team like this. Now, you talked about the Illinois game. The first thing that I heard after the Illinois game, after they were a number 9 ranked team in the polls, was, well, they must not be that good. And then all of a sudden they come back the very next week and go beat USC, another top 25 team. So that kind of put that to rest. It seems like the goalposts try to move the goalposts with Indiana each and every week based upon what happens. And it's one of those things that, hey, Indiana, you got to go beat a Oregon. You're going to have to beat a Penn State or Ohio State, and to help crack that ceiling to get through, that the national media won't always look for the next goalpost to move on them.
Absolutely. Well, it should be an interesting matchup. Indiana traveling out west, taking on Oregon, battle of two teams, unbeaten, and both playing really, really good football. It should be some fun watching on Saturday for those of us who will be sitting on our couch enjoying all the action. Shannon Griffith, thank you very much for joining us. He is Hoosier.com's lead football analyst. Really appreciate your insight into this classic contest.
Absolutely. Anytime.
We will be right back on Sports by Q after we take a brief timeout.
Everything is expensive right now. Gas, food, you name it. You're spending more, you are making the same or less money. So, what do? You rack up credit card debt. That's what you do. It's not your fault. It's the economy. And guess what? If you rack up too much credit card debt like some of us, you can't pay your bills. Then the credit card companies, as nice as they are, start hounding you for money. Then you start your downward spiral. A smart thing for you to do is to call the Zero Debt. They can help you consolidate all your credit card bills into one affordable payment. Millions of people have done it. It works to make you debt-free. Make this free call right now. It costs you nothing to learn more.
800-507-7293. 800-507-7293. 800-507-7293. That's 800-507-7293.
College football now. Want to get your thoughts very quickly, Tony, on the Bill Belichick situation. It appears UNC is off this week. It appears he'll remain the coach. They're 2-3 on the season. This has not gone well. We'll talk more about it later. I want to get a quick thought, though. You and I never thought this was going to work long-term anyway, and now it seems that we may be right.
Yeah, I thought this was just a mistake from the beginning. I just don't see, pro football coaches, especially successful ones, coming down to the college. It's a totally different game. The practice routine is different. The players are different. These are not guys who are going to spend 8 hours in a film room, figuring something out. They've got classes. They're trying to be young people. Yes, they're getting paid now. They are not professional players. I thought this was a disaster coming from the beginning, and it really looks like it is just not going to end well in North Carolina.
Yeah, this may be one season for him there. We'll talk more about that probably, next week after the weekend. We get into next week as well. Hey, this weekend, though, we just talked to a couple of great guys, good friends of ours, Zach and Shannon, Oregon, Indiana. I think this is a fantastic matchup.
This should be a really exciting football game. The two quarterbacks are as good as it gets right now in college football. Mendoza against Moore should be a great matchup. This is the time. This is what Indiana needs. They have to prove themselves. 20 years ago, it was Oregon who wasn't the traditional power, who had to beat some teams, and then they would beat a USC, or they would beat a UCLA at the time when they were highly ranked, or a Washington, and that set them on the map. For all of Indiana's success the last 2 years, they need that signature big win. Yes, they blew out Illinois a couple of weeks ago, but this would be the signature win against a top 5 program if they can get it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Want to stay quickly in the Big Ten. Ohio State taking on Illinois right now. Buckeyes a 2-touchdown favorite. That defense is just outstanding.
Yeah, there's so many players on that defense that are going to play on Sunday. It's just scary. So it makes it easy for the offense. You've got enough weapons on the outside. Sayan is doing everything right. He's not overcommitting himself. He's not making mistakes. They're just playing smart football on offense and letting the talent on that defense carry the day.
Here's what's scary. Those two games, Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, Illinois, 4 of the top 5 passer-rated quarterbacks in the country right there. The other one, by the way, at USC. Top 5 rated quarterbacks all right there in the Big Ten. Let's go to the ACC, Alabama, Missouri. And, we're going to talk with Colin Gay tomorrow, and we're going to talk with Colin McAndrew as well about this game. I love this matchup, and I think it's both teams need this win for different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama wants to keep that momentum going and keep carrying things on, the way they've been able to right that ship since Florida State. And Missouri, a lot like Indiana, they're always been there with Drinkwitz the last few years. They've won a lot of ball games, but they don't have that signature win. This would be their signature win. This Missouri team reminds me, this may be a little bit before your time. I'm going to go back to the early 70s. Mississippi State, late 70s under Jackie Sherrill.
Yeah.
They were always good. They could never beat the Alabama. They could never beat the Auburn. They could never get over the hump. So that running offense of his just wasn't good enough. We'll have to see if this rushing offense, if they can control the clock, Missouri has a shot. They have a shot at least, but it's going to be up to that ground game. If Alabama shuts that ground game down, it's over.
Yeah, I totally agree. Alabama was impressed last week. I thought that was a trap game. They might, look past, kind of smelling themselves a little bit after the win over Georgia. They didn't. Came in, that second half really, I thought really controlled the line of scrimmage in the second half and got a win against a very good Commodores team. Let's not take away what Vanderbilt and what Clark Lee has done there. Okay, our moment of awe is up next.
Fans of big sports radio and sports spectacular podcasts have a new home on the Chief Sports Network. Find your favorite programs and content all in one place by downloading the Chief Sports app in your mobile device. Created in South Carolina, the Chief Sports Network is the home of an expanding network of live and podcast format programming. It is also the home of one of the leading national college football podcasts, JC and Morgan, hosted by ESPN's Mike Morgan and 24/7 Sports' JC Sherbert. Download the Chief Sports app for free and find all of your favorite programming under one easy umbrella. Thanks to all of our markets for your loyal support of Big Sports Radio and our Sports Spectacular podcast, and we look forward to connecting with you anywhere in the world on the Chief Sports app.
Well, time now for a moment of awe, and this one in the form of a check. You know, it's one thing when maybe in your life, you write a big purchase, you buy a car, you buy a house, or you buy a ring for your wife or something, or, significant other, whatever the case is. But usually you don't get a chance to write a check for $50 million. But that's exactly the amount that a longtime major donor for Stanford has given to that athletic program. Bradford Freeman, he's a private equity guy. Of course, those guys always have a lot of money. And so he has donated $50 million, graduated from the school back in 1964. And so out there, look, the Cardinal program, one of the great athletic programs throughout the years, really suffered lately since COVID. I mean, things have not been well. We're not one of the marquee schools wanted when the Big Ten came in and raided the Pac-12, but they think this may be a shot in the arm, a big boost to the GM there, Andrew Luck, the former Stanford and Indianapolis Colts quarterback, as they try to move forward. So, moment of awe indeed. $50 million. Somewhere Dr. Evil is like just he fell over in his chair. $50 million. Wow, just like that? Doing good things? That's amazing. Thanks again to our guests as well, Andrew Monaco, Zach Neel, and Shannon Griffith. We appreciate you as well. It's a Sports IQ. We'll do it again tomorrow. Make it a great day.
Thanks for listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith, Monday through Friday. Continue the conversation at Sports IQ LS. We'll see you next time.